bowls, and people have asked questions about the Celebration Bowl in terms of the payout. What does that look like? Just to give you updates there, you're talking about $1.2 million payout in terms of the bowls that go to the conference. A percentage of that goes to the institution, depending on the split, 75-25 for the SWAC, 70-30 in terms of the MEAC, or that was the last percentage breakdown in terms of what that looks like. But I want to do a little comparison so you get a chance of what does that look like. Obviously, you have the major bowls, and you've seen what they do as they off the chart in terms of the New Year's Six, $14 million, significant type of money. But you see how long they've been in the business for the Rose Bowl, going back 100 years in terms of what they do there and how they're tied into the CFP and how they have really engulfed all the money. But if you look at some of the other bowls out there, there was an article that talked about the Quick Lane Bowl, really focusing on New Mexico State, which it was encouraging fans to purchase tickets. And it wasn't so much about purchasing a ticket. Obviously, you want to support your team. But a lot of it would maybe be of the distance that a lot of fans wouldn't necessarily travel for a 6-6 Aggies team that was playing a 6-6 Bowling Green Falcons team, if you would, coming out of the MAC all the way in Detroit. So they were asking fans to support the team that did make a bowl and purchase tickets so they could donate them to Detroit area youth. That's a great thing for the youth to get a chance to get out and see some college football. But I wanted to get into some of the money. When you talk about this particular matchup, when you see what was going on here, three things to know about the Bowling Green as they entering into at that time the Quick Lane Bowl, which was this past week, if you would, a week ago, I should say. The university closed travel cost them $400,000 travel to Detroit. When you talk about the Celebration Bowl, one thing is unique. You heard last year they got the deal with Delta, actually flew the teams in there to Atlanta, and that was at no cost to the teams. So you didn't have to worry about that type of cost where you see it doing $400K for Detroit. And so some interesting things there when you think about it. But this is really it was interesting when I've seen this when you talk about these payouts. Because a lot of folks talk about $1 million, $2, $3 million payouts for these bowls. One thing people don't realize, a lot of times these bowls, a bigger number in there, but they'll charge you, as you see, for your travel, your hotel stay, food and things of that nature while you in there. They'll also charge you for the band in terms of the band and who you bring in there. They'll charge you a ticket price for the band members in the stand. And so the payout for the Quick Lane Bowl was $150K. Yeah, let me say that again. The payout for that bowl game was $150K, and which is why you see the fact that they were encouraging their fans to buy tickets, because this is where it can get a little benefit to the team. New Mexico State athletic director was quoted saying that the university will retain 100% of the revenue from the first 2,000 tickets it sells, 50% of the next 2,000 tickets, which by New Mexico wants its fan base to purchase all of these tickets, because if they did, they could recoup $420K in terms of what that means. So just to give you some indications of what's out there and why you really need to look at the contracts, or at least get some more information of some generalities of these various bowls.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is out on assignment, comes back. Charles dips out a couple of times. Charles then takes a couple of days sending in his paperwork. Man, see, that's what happens when you get in that professor status. I guess you get a tenure track, you just act up. Hey, Drew, I know you're on the tenure track. Don't get caught up in that. Make sure you get your tenure first, brother.
Got to build these days up so I can retire early, Doc.
Exactly. Welcome to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, episode 382. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small. From the NAIA to the NCAA, we share insights and information on HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. We simply call it HBCU sports pedagogy. I'm your host, Dr. Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency, LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. Guys, before I ask how you're doing, I'm going to take a little personal privilege and put that up there a little bit to show off, just everybody recognize. I want to shout out to my LBs, 24 Sons of Raw, as this is my 32nd Alpha versary, as we like to say, in Alpha land out there. And so for my brothers, all them celebrating today and sending things out, I want to take a little personal privilege and put it on the show. I was ready to wear my black and gold, but I had to do a presentation today. So I decided I wouldn't show out the world in terms of black and gold. I didn't want to get it confused up there. Bowie State University, I got a chance to present with some students doing some research up there and talking about the 10 pillars that we talked about here and there on this show in particular. But again, shout out to my LBs. Happy 32nd as the countdown continues, man, to 35. Can you imagine that? It's like this with the show, 382 and counting.
How about that? Want to say happy alphaversary to you. You brothers continue to hold up the light on and upward, young man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. With that being said, let me go back to you, Charles. How you doing today?
Doing well. Just had a quick break into Jackson for Ashley Robinson's golf tournament on yesterday. Had a fun time out there, pressing the flesh, if you will, with some of the Jackson State dignitaries and playing a little golf as well. So enjoyed that quite a bit. A lot of fundraising efforts underway with Jackson State athletics and things of that nature as they gear up this week, the blue and white week this week, gearing up to the spring game this Saturday.
AD Drew, you think we're going to let him get off that easy? You sitting there talking with all the dignitaries, particularly VP of athletics, Ashley Robinson. What's some of the insight? What's going on? What do you know, man?
I mean, they got a lot of good stuff going on over there in terms of fundraising and things of that nature, Dr. Cavil. So I'm sure that when the time is appropriate, they will roll out the banner and the headlines for some stuff, initiatives that they have going on. But a lot of excitement right now.
Hey, where's the mic? Football. I
didn't know Jackson State existed since they lost their football coach. I didn't know they could still raise money.
I didn't know either. How about that? But guess what? That proverbial chip is on the shoulder over there. So,
well, I hope you shot a good round since you was out there showing off.
Did you get double digits, bro?
Your golf game was.
You know what? Me and Dwayne Lewis, we had some good shots out there. We didn't win, but we shot a good score. We shot 8 under. We shot a legit 8
under. Your game didn't travel.
How many mulligans did you have to buy?
I did not. We shot a legit 8 under. So wow. we had some good shots out there. Shout out to Dwayne Lewis, Sports Information Break over there at Jackson State. But him and Ashley was grouped together, and we had some good shots out there. Tell you what, Ashley Robinson, he can fire that thing right down the fairway. So.
Yeah, shout out to Silas Edward McMorris. Prairie View women's softball is rolling through the SWAC. Yeah, they rolling right now, 15-0 and counting in terms of SWAC play. And what is it, 16 in a row? With that being said, A.D. Drew, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing all right, my brother. Doing all right. First of all, happy to be back in my home studio doing a show for you, Dr. Cavil, instead of just having to hang out at the office for an extra hour and a half, because I usually finish up about a half hour before the show's supposed to come on. So I just have to sit there and just kind of find something else to do, find another project. So it's good to be in my space on a Thursday.
It's always good to be in the home studio. I agree with you. There's something about being in that home space and being comfortable. Like you said, good point there. Before I go back to you, Charles, and see what news you want to discuss, let me give a shout out to Silas Edward McMorris, as we did, Theron Waters, Emma Price, as Theron Waters talking about hashtag Hell Wildcats, Emma Price talking about Daytona Beach. They in the building. Mary Allen checking in, HBCU land, no doubt about it. Chuck Hunt, Brandon King, brother Gerald Wayne Joseph. What's going on? Good to see you. Good to see you jumping in there from the brotherhood there. With that being said, Charles, what's on your mind? What's hot out there? What you want to share with the people?
Yeah, we got another classic to take a look at in Glenn County Stadium to host the inaugural Coastal City HBCU Classic. And this comes to us from the Brunswick News. The Coastal City HBCU Classic was officially announced at a press conference on last Friday. Glenn County Stadium Athletic Facility, the SIC conference game between Albany State and Savannah State will be held at the stadium at 3 p.m. September 23rd, and the game will be streamed on NBC Peacock.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Another classic. We'll see how it goes and adds to it. Shout out to the D2 HBCU programs out of SIC getting a piece of that action. A.D. Drew, what's on your mind?
Well, Dr. Cavil, coaching changes. Well, not necessarily coaching changes. Coaching hires is probably the best word for it. As we know, A&T has hired Montre Ross as their new basketball coach. I can't remember if y'all went over this on Monday evening or not. If they did, let me know, and I'll move on to my second coach. But
no, that's good stuff.
Okay, Ross is the 14th head coach in A&T's history, and they were supposed to hold their introductory press conference today. Ross is a native of Philadelphia, PA, and has spent the previous 3 seasons as an assistant with Temple. Before he was at Temple, he was with the Delaware Blue Hens. That's Delaware, not Delaware State. Just want to make sure everybody understands that. He's a graduate of Winston-Salem State and played for Big House. That would be Clarence Gaines. So that's one of the 2 coaching hirings on this particular week. Also on the Division II level, Sean Walker just became the new basketball coach at Allen University. You may have heard that name, Sean Walker. He spent some time in the SWAC at Grambling for a few years. And the Walker resume is quite impressive. He is coming over to Allen, and he's also changing genders because he was the women's associate head coach at Shaw. Now he's going over to the men's side at Allen. Before that, he was at Elizabeth City. He's actually been at Elizabeth City twice, from 18 to 22 on the men's side, and from 2003 to 2014 on the men's side. He was also on the women's side at Elizabeth City from 2001 to 2002. And prior to that, let's see, he was at Grambling from 14 to 17. Prior to being at Elizabeth City, he was at Voorhees. So he's kind of been all over, primarily along that East Coast, but he did spend a little bit of time. He's got a couple of SWAC hours there. You know, he came, saw a little bit of that SWAC, and decided he wanted to get back to the East Coast. So, and he's
Good
a
point.
94 graduate of Elizabeth City.
Fascinating background when you picked it up. I want to go back to Monty Ross from this perspective. As you said, he did his opening monologue today, press conference, if you would. And one of the things that stood out to me is he talked about the fact that they're going to hang their hats on the defensive side of the ball. I've heard that at least, I don't know how many times from various coaches, current coaches, previous coaches, certainly new coaches.
Which sport are you talking about,
And
Dr.
so-
Cavil? Because you hear from football and baseball too.
Yeah, because defense sells tickets. Because defense sells tickets.
You hear it in football too, so you're right. It's across the board. So the question I have for you, and quickly, because we can get into the break, and I didn't know if there's some other news, but this just stuck with me, so I had to ask you. You know, is particularly in basketball, I guess in other sports you can thought about that too, but in basketball, is that something to deal with the just not having as many shooters out there on the basketball side? I know I asked you this to some degree, Charles, before we started the show, but it just is interesting to me. And oddly enough, as you said, you hear it in all sports, but basketball, I was like, man, that's not necessarily what people want to see. And even in football, they talk about defense, but you want to see action, ball in the sky, whatever. What is it with this, like, we'll be on the defensive side of the ball? Charles?
I think your better shooters are just not in the college game anymore. I think that has a lot to do with it. Particularly for me, you know, it's just watching basketball nowadays. It is very half-court dominated. You don't see this sort of fast break, sort of flowy basketball that you get on the next level. So it's very much in the hands of the head coach in terms of calling out sets and making sure you get this perfect shot within 10 seconds, and you sort of slow the game down and shorten the game, if you will. So it's just not the best brand of basketball to watch.
Drew, you coached on that level, so you seen a little bit too. So you can give me some personal insight. One, I guess, is that something that you said, or
we lived on it? and let me tell you why we lived on it. Let me tell you why we lived on it. Because anybody can have a bad shooting day. No one should ever have a bad defensive day, because defense is about effort. You should be able to go out and give some effort. It does me no good as a basketball coach if you score 15 and you give up 14. That does me no good. Our goal was always that one-on-one matchup, if we're going to break it down, should be as close to a 2-to-1 ratio as possible. If you score 4 points, you need to give up 2. If you score 8, your defensive matchup needs to only be good for 4 points. And that's kind of the philosophy that we had throughout the team. Now, of course, it didn't mathematically work out like that, because you never doubled anybody up. But that was the philosophy that we played with. And of course, help the helper. It's a team effort. You out there guarding a person, but you got backup. So it was all part of the defensive philosophy. And the thing was, take pride in your matchup. Don't let, and I'll just use us for example, Dr. Cavil should not be picking up my foul because I was lazy on defense and he had to come over and help, and he was a half second slow on his rotation. Yes,
I appreciate that. I don't want to pick up nothing.
Alcorn is painful to watch basketball wise because of their style. South Carolina State is painful to watch football because of their defensive style. Let me
let Charles jump in here, because I think he got a quick question. I want to make sure we get it in. Yeah, I want to say this, Drew. You sold me on it. I still want more action, but you at least gave me some good reasons. Charles, go ahead.
I mean, really quick question. I mean, do you have to teach defense at the college level? I mean, I watch AAU basketball. There's no defense at AAU basketball. So my question is, we shooting the ball at AAU basketball, but it just doesn't translate to organized, sort of basketball, if you would.
There's no defense at the park either. So, you do have to teach it. And
you don't become a playground legend with defense.
No, you don't become a playground unless you're taking charges.
Yeah,
so, and I'll be quick with this. We would probably spend the first week or two of actual practice in fall camp for basketball. I can count the number of times that we would actually touch a ball during those first couple of weeks, because it was all about defense and conditioning, because you need your legs to play defense.
Transfer portal.
So it was layups, free throws, and defense for that first week. It seemed like.
Ooh. Oh, this is good stuff, man.
Got the bling to show it.
Yep. No, hey, it may work, like you said. But everybody, somebody can't do it as well as others. Before we get out of here, I think it's interesting because we talked a little bit earlier, obviously celebrating gymnastics at HBCU. We had 3 women that won awards or were recognized in terms of gymnastics. And then obviously you have the new program coming in at Talladega. That was at FIS. Then you have lacrosse popping up across, obviously some new baseball programs. But this past weekend was the Frozen Four, as they like to call it, in Tampa, and college hockey organization eyes deliberate effort to make sports a reality at HBCUs from HBCU Sports. The director of an influential college hockey organization indicated that it plans to work with the NHL to introduce the sport at HBCUs. Mike Sneed, the director of College Hockey Inc., explained Friday during a press conference at the Frozen Four in Tampa, Florida, that there is a desire to expand the sport at the collegiate level, and HBCUs would be a target. Quote, would mean not just a lot of college hockey, but for the sport of hockey. Sneed said in response to a question about what it would mean if HBCUs were involved in hockey, end quote. Currently, none of the 107 HBCUs across America offer organized hockey to any degree. One HBCU, Tennessee State, as we talked about when it came out and was announced in 2021, it would conduct a feasibility study to determine whether the school could start a Division I hockey program. Tennessee State already has established a relationship with Nashville Predators through $1 million in 1 month fundraising scholarship campaign for Tennessee State students. Quote, the idea of establishing a college hockey program at TSU is a tremendous opportunity as the nation's first HBCU to take on this endeavor, end quote. TSU President Glenn DeGover said then, quote, this allows us to expand the sport, increase diversity, and introduce a new fan base, end quote. Last February, Tennessee State's athletic director, Mickey Allen, the Predators president, the CEO, Sean Henry, announced a fundraising campaign to launch men's and women's hockey program. The funding will go towards scholarships, on-campus venue, equipment, travel, and other expenses. The school, however, has not publicly disclosed a dollar figure needed to support hockey or a timeline for when the new program will start. Though ambitious, he said College Hockey Inc. wants to be more deliberate in creating a pathway for hockey to be a reality at Black colleges. Last quote I'll give here is, quote, we're working in NHL to expand the college hockey does, and part of that would be more deliberate with the 109 HBCUs, end quote. He said, even if the club hockey, not NCAA hockey, but just club hockey, end quote. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like moving forward. I did want to dump that in there because I think it's fascinating to see what that will mean, and we'll kind of keep our eyes on it and see what that looks like. We saw the momentum at Tennessee State. It hasn't pushed forward in terms of the actual program, but a lot of good things around it with the partnership with Nashville Predators and where it may go. So I'm fascinated to kind of see what that looks like, getting outside of the traditional sports that you see played. With that, Stickers will be right back after this first break. We'll come back on the other side. These gentlemen were not here as we talk baseball, really got in depth. I want to get their thoughts in terms of what took place this weekend. Drew is especially at the D2 level, so he'll get a chance to share, some of those top teams, anything changed at that level, what it's looked like and going forward, as well as maybe a little touch or two on softball for the women. So we'll be right back after this break, and then we'll get into some football spring meetings in the third segment. So stick with us. We'll be right back after this break in terms of talking some baseball, a little bit of softball.
Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Now, you can't live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Vanilla smoked sea salt seasoning is for seafood. The tarragon and fennel bring out the natural sweetness in seafood. I also use it in rice dishes, on yams, asparagus, blueberry pancakes, and believe it or not, chocolate chip cookies. Vanilla smoked sea salt adds a salty and savory component to sweet dishes that create a symphony for the tongue.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Mills inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles Bishop and A.D. Drew. As we get into it in terms of softball, I'm going to start there. Division I level, Prairie View, 15-0, 15 straight wins as they continue just to get it done in the conference race. Grambling is behind them at 10-4. That's in the West. Everybody else is well behind in terms of what that looks like. But in the East, it's a little tighter race. Alabama State at 11-4, Bethune-Cookman at 10-5, FAMU at 8-4 in terms of those races. It's going to be fascinating. We had some separation in the MEAC when you look at what took place. We thought it was coming down to Morgan State, North Carolina Central. North Carolina Central took it to chin, so Morgan State kind of continues to roll. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like as you get into the race there. But with that being said, I did want to get your thoughts in terms of baseball, in terms of what took place this past weekend. Really, in a lot of ways, that was the halfway mark. Now, rain played a real effect as you got in the last week. It was the first weekend where you started to see some cancellations of the games. Obviously, that started early in the process because it was Easter weekend. So they had a couple of programs that started on Thursday and were thinking they were going to be able to end things either that Friday with doubleheaders or Saturday being able to give Sunday off for those that wanted to go church and celebrate Easter. But because of the rain, you got folks trying to push things in, and they were going to try to play on Sunday. And ultimately, fields were too wet. Rain continued to do its thing. And so you had a couple of cancellations, which included Valley and Alabama State. They only got couple of games in, Bethune-Cookman at Alabama A&M, they only got one game in there. Southern and Prairie View actually didn't get any of the games in there, but they decided to play on Tuesday. The game was scheduled to be in Prairie View, but I guess they wanted to get it in. Field was too wet to play in there, so they decided to move the game to Tuesday, cancel a couple of games they had planned to play, and they played 2. Both of them close games, but Southern gets it done, gets the sweep in terms of those 2 series, which threw some things in the loop. With coming in there, Prairie View snuck back in the first coming in there. They didn't play any games, but after Tuesday, Grambling stays at the number 1 ranking, even though they lost 2 out of 3 to Texas Southern. So things have tightened up in the West. 9-3 with Grambling. Southern improves to 7-4 with those 2 wins over Prairie View. Prairie View falls to 7-4, and Texas Southern is right behind them at the 7-5 mark. That's what's going on in the West. I'll stop right there and ask your thoughts on those 2 divisions, what took place this weekend in terms of looking at it at the first half of the baseball season as everything flips over the next 5 weeks. Charles, starting with you, West Division? Any inclination of what you can see taking place? Or
no, definitively no. I can't make heads or tails of the West, and that's a good thing. That makes for a fun weekend every weekend when you're taking a look at the SWAC West, because at any point in time, Grambling, Southern, Prairie View, or Texas Southern can win a series against each other. And I think all teams play a good brand of baseball, timely hitting, a good solid starter for each team. But Southern sweeping Prairie View caught me a little by surprise. And, I think the last time I was on, I said, at some point, Southern baseball kicks in. And so I'm curious, we're at the midpoint now. Is this that point where we start to see Southern baseball, hit that stride and become Southern baseball? So I'm just really curious in that regards on the SWAC West. On the SWAC East, I think the top three teams.
Hold on, I'm gonna come back to the SWAC East. I want to stay in the West. I'm gonna ask Judy, then we're gonna parcel up, bring you back, we'll break down with East, and then let you go to work on the East there. I know you get excited about that baseball trial. And there he finna show out. I got to watch get to go. Man, we know you're a star. He's so happy to be back in the lab. Look at
I am. I don't know what to do. I mean, microphone hot.
I appreciate exactly. I appreciate you. AD Drew, let's look at the West. Let me give you one quick update that was fascinating in terms of Charles, particularly Southern and Prairie View. The first game was what Southern has been able to do over the last couple of years. Prairie View was up in that game. Southern ties it in the 8th with 2 runs, and then they get a walk-off in the 9th inning to win it 5-4. They win another close one in the second one, 4-3. This is the program that was there. What's even interesting to me is the fact that it'll be intriguing to see how much will this stay and haunt Prairie View. The fact that they decided to play the game. Again, they were supposed to be in Prairie View, but they played in Baton Rouge. I'm not sure they're going to switch the series back. They're probably going to play those last 3 at the end of the season still in Baton Rouge. So that's 5 games that essentially were played in the home, especially when you're playing that close. You would think home field would give you a little advantage. So I'm fascinated to see what that looks like. Kudos for Prairie View coach saying he wanted to play games. Drew, what are your thoughts about all that I put in there?
And I didn't look at their box score. I'm going to assume, even though the series was switched to Southern, that Prairie View was still the home team and batted last. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the box score because I've seen that happen.
I don't think the way they did it out there. I'll look at the box score because of your point, but they specifically talked about it as a walk-off. Usually, you think about a walk-off.
Walk-off is the
last. That's the last.
Because if I'm Prairie View, the only way I'm coming to you to play is we can play the game at your field, but I that was my home game. I want my last back because that would have possibly prevented. Well, it wouldn't have prevented what you said, but that would have been the go-ahead home run instead of the walk-off home run, which leads me to think, Dr. Cavil, that maybe when they go back, because they've got to go back to Prairie View, that they'll make those 2 games up where Prairie View actually has the last at bat, because that's a distinct disadvantage for Prairie View to essentially play 5 road games against one opponent.
Is there a team that walks teams off more than Southern? Or no. A team that, they fight.
Drew may be able to tell you something in the SIEC. Obviously, they're not really playing baseball as a conference. Neither is the MEAC, but I hadn't seen any program, and I've been following baseball for 15 years since we have really been covering. One of the sports I started with was baseball. Drew,
and if Southern don't walk you off, they're gonna walk you down.
They're gonna walk
the game
down.
up and send the game to extras.
It would be fun to just informally poll coaches in terms of playing the Southern Jaguars with those 9th inning demons, because something happens in the 9th inning. They either gonna catch it or they're gonna walk you off. I have never seen a team more fortuitous in the 8th and 9th innings than that Southern baseball program.
Well, let's take our second break. We'll come back on the other side, and I'll get y'all opinion on the East. I want to see how interesting that division is as I break it down. Stick with us. We'll be right back after our second break. We'll come back on the the other side. We'll give you a little swag baseball on the East to see what they're doing on that side of the conference.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want to loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil, inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Professor Bishop, Professor Drew. As we talk about this, before we go to the East, I do got to sneak this in there. Yesterday, Texas Southern went to play 2 games in Kansas. Tuesday it took place. Wednesday, it looked like an obvious. The third baseman dropped his head. The right fielder over there, left fielder over there. He looked up. He knew it was gone. Referee just took one look, came back and said foul. It would have been a grand slam, tied the game 11-11. It would have been an 8-inning inning with things still to go to see what took place. And conveniently, as I like to say, because I put it all the way out there, hashtag convenient. They come in there, then they go and look at the replay and like, well, we can't overturn it because it's not clear. Like, it was clear to everybody else. I was sick. I started to ask Roy to play the video, but I just couldn't stomach. So shout out to Varick to bringing it back up, because I did want to make sure I shared that out there. But frustrating when you see that level of incompetence taking place.
Their baseball budget is bigger than Texas Southern's total athletic budget, and you can't get the right camera angle to show that their ball was fair.
That is so bad.
Right. And you can't hire competent officials to call the game fair.
SEC, no, Big 12. Big 12 officials.
Exactly. I mean, but they're not.
Yeah, they were not. They were incompetent that day. Yeah, correct. They were incompetent that day. I mean, that is a call that you can't get that wrong. You can't get the fair pole.
No, come on. Get that wrong. And it wasn't like it was a game loser either. It just tied up the game. Who's to say they wouldn't have found a way to get whatever. East, Bethune-Cookman is 8-2. Alabama State is 9-3. FAMU is 9-3, and then the bottom falls out in terms of that. But it'll be interesting. I will say, between the bottom 3 teams who will be fighting for that 4th slot. The top 4 teams get into the tournament. And unlike the West, it looks like we're clear of who 4 teams will be in. We just don't know what finish they will come in and what seeding they will have. But let's stick with the East. Bethune-Cookman might be the surprise of the first half of the season. They lead the conference race, 8-2. Alabama State at 9-3. FAMU at 9-3, as I said. Sticking with you first, Drew, what are your thoughts of what's going on in the East?
Man, I don't know what to tell you about this doggone East, man. First of all, let's start with the obvious. Valley and Jackson State are fighting for the fourth slot.
Mm-hmm.
So that right there ought to tell you what the heck we got going on with all this with all this ball, man. And Bethune not getting that series in against Alabama A&M. Will that affect the race one way or the other? The fact that Bethune will potentially have fewer games, because now you got to get into percentages and things like
That's
that.
true.
Will that be an advantage for Bethune, or will that be a disadvantage for Bethune from that series against Alabama A&M? We're gonna play. We're gonna have to see that, because correct me if I'm wrong. That they got one or they got both here. I mean, did they get
just one? The first one.
Yeah, they got one.
Just the first one.
So there's an opportunity to make up one of those games when the series gets flipped. And like I said, you just let Alabama A&M beat the home team on Bethune's field for a doubleheader in one of those in their flip series. Go back to that BAC schedule where they were playing for a single, a double, and a single, or however they decide to do it. So I want to see them try to make up at least one of those two games that were lost to weather last week, because it is going to be that important at the top. And once again, Valley, Jackson, gonna be interesting when those two play again. You can't afford to lose to Valley. FAMU has to sweep this series this upcoming weekend. We just gonna put it like that. This upcoming series this weekend against Alabama A&M, this is the one that you have to get the sweep against, because the other 5 teams, you're subject to drop one. You got to take care of business against Alabama A&M this weekend if you're Florida A&M.
Good stuff. Good stuff when you talk about those need to win, whether you're trying to sweep a Valley and or Alabama A&M, to give yourself a little cushion in the room. Fascinating in the East. I like the point you brought up. Will those two games hurt Bethune-Cookman in regards to not getting them in? One thing I will say with the baseball coaches, over the last couple of years, they've really done a lot of things to see if they can make up games whenever possible. So you're right. If there's a way to get one in, they seem to do it. You just saw it with Prairie View. We'll see what it looks like, because you discussed it early in terms of who was the home. Another great question. But with you, Charles, what is your assessment of, the first half of the East, and or particularly what took place this past weekend?
I think the top 3 teams in the East have definitely separated themselves in terms of the upper tier programs. When you talk about Alabama State, Bethune-Cookman, and Florida A&M, how prophetic it was 2 years ago when we were looking at that SWAC baseball tournament and saw that missed opportunity by Jackson State to win that SWAC championship. Mm-hmm. And then you look 2 years down the line, Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M have in many ways usurped Jackson State's perch at the top of the SWAC East. And this year is really playing out. Jackson State is a little bit deceptive because you see them in terms of their number 2 in the SWAC in terms of hitting, but take a look at those midweek games where they're beating up on the likes of Tougaloo or Russ College. So, to me, it's a little bit deceptive when you really need those bats, especially on weekend series in the SWAC. Those bats, the pitching has won out. And they've dropped series to Alabama A&M, dropped series Florida A&M, dropped series to Alabama State. Alabama State with the sweep. That sweep by Alabama State a couple weekends ago really cemented, where Jackson State's baseball program is in terms of looking up to Alabama State, and in many ways looking up to Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M as well.
Oh, wow. Barrick has an update. I don't know how reliable this is, but Barrick is usually pretty on it, and he gets good information. He shared in the thread, he heard the SWAC made a ruling, and PV lost those home games. Heard they didn't cover the infield, which means they probably didn't have a tarp, which is not good. I do know the SWAC had a ruling that everybody was supposed to invest in tarps. I know Prairie View had tarps for a while. I'm not sure what happened there, but that's something interesting to follow up in. Obviously, we'll see if we get that. And then at some point in the season, we'll see, what takes place in terms of the second half of the season. But again, it's fascinating to see what took place there. And if that was the case of why maybe the coach decided to get those games in, with that being said. With that going on, let's get in there a little bit in terms of the SIAC. Morning, AD Drew, give us a little update in terms of what's taking place there. Albany, my understanding, they had another tough loss weekend game, not being able to do well there, which makes it tougher. As I asked you last week to kind of give an update of what's taking place there. Obviously, first thing, they got to find a way to win the SIAC regular season. They're pushing on that. Will be fascinating. And they probably have to win the tournament. I think you talked a little bit about on Sunday, the challenge for them making the playoffs is that they probably have to win both, because they're unlikely, even with the record overall, be able to get an at-large bid. But give us a little update on the SIAC, those kind of top teams that get it done, and what's taking place in the SIAC baseball.
Well, Dr. Cavil, it's pretty simple. Well, first of all, I'll say this. If you're Albany State, you cannot lose to a Morehouse.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
We're just gonna leave it right there. Albany State was 21-1 coming into that game. Morehouse was 13-12 coming into the game. That's just like I say, it's imperative that Florida A&M sweeps Alabama A&M this weekend. That's that same type of series on the Division II level. So, Dr. Cavil, what that has created is real simple. It's Albany State, it's Spring Hill, and there's everybody else. Spring Hill, 20-4. Albany State, 21-2. They play the last series of the season in Mobile. That will determine who will be the number one seed, because both teams essentially this weekend, have Albany State has Miles, which will be a competitive game, and Kentucky State, which will be a competitive game. Looking at Spring Hill's schedule, they've got Morehouse this weekend. Once again, they need to sweep Morehouse. They have Benedict the following weekend. They need to sweep Spring Hill should sweep Benedict to set up that showdown the last weekend of the series. And no, we got to get to the other side. I want to let Charles get in on that for a moment. But I do want to come back with some SIAC softball when we come back to the other side. But go ahead, Charles.
No, I was asking, where was Savannah State within the pantheon of teams in the SIAC?
They're a distant third. They're 15-5.
Gotcha.
Yes, they're a distant third.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's going to come down.
They would need both Spring Hill and Albany State to kind of fall apart to really get back in the race. But they are a team that could give you trouble in the tournament. So it'll be kind of interesting to see, are they able to stay pretty much that solid third best team? Who will they look like? Because if the standings take place, you think about this in terms of seeding, you're talking about 1, 2, and 3. That means whoever's second will face Savannah State in the tournament theoretically in terms of number 2 and 3 seed, unless they get upset. So it's fascinating. Great points.
Number 1 will play Edward Waters as of right now.
Before we take this break.
What was that? Say, give you a quick thought.
Just talk.
Obviously, right now, Albany State would be matched up against Edward Waters in the first round. Switching over to softball quickly, Dr. Cavil. Spring Hill, once again, muddies up the water for our SIAC teams. Softball is broken up east and west. Yes, east and west when it comes to softball. So Spring Hill sit at the top of SIAC softball at a 13-1 clip on the west side. Miles sits second, and Tuskegee sits third. Miles 9-2, Tuskegee 10-3. Obviously, we know that it all comes down to percentage points. Spring Hill is going to win the West. Miles and Tuskegee won't catch him. You know why Miles and Tuskegee won't catch him? Guess who has to play each other this weekend? Miles and Tuskegee play each other this weekend. So the number 2 and the number 3 team play each other this weekend. I doubt very seriously either one of these teams will sweep the other team, which is going to allow Spring Hill to add to their lead because they have Kentucky State this weekend. Now, who can't buddy up the water for Spring Hill? They have Lane next weekend. So is Lane as good as their record? We'll find out when they play Spring Hill. Because you'll find out that flip it over to the East. We have a race in the East. Edward Waters still at the top, 11-3. Tied with them in the win column is Albany State at 11-5. Closely behind both of those, Fort Valley 9-8. So the East went from Edward Waters running away with it to Albany State pulling the Southern and deciding they want to walk somebody down.
Good stuff. Let me give you a quick update in CIAA before we take this last break. Bowie State, the Bulldogs, sit at 25-10 overall, 8-0 in the conference race in the Northern Division. Closest team behind them at this point is Elizabeth City State at 4-2 in conference play, but they're just 4-10 overall. So I think it's going to all be about the Bulldogs. We'll see. In the Southern Division, it's Claflin and Winston-Salem State. You have Claflin sitting at 19-9 overall, 5-1 in the conference race. But Winston-Salem State has played more games, almost twice as many as they sit at 8-2 in the conference race, but 15-9 overall. So those are the teams that you probably want to keep your eyes on. Sneaking in there, I'll give some love to Fayetteville State at 7-3, but they're just 12-15 overall. So that's what's going on in CIAA. With that, let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side and talk a little bit of spring football. We got a gluttony of games this weekend. We had some last weekend. We'll see what Charles and A.D. Drew have heard about what's taking place in spring football. Anything standing out? You know, I take a caution with spring football. Everybody feels they do wonderful and look good, but it is what it is. It is spring football, so we will talk about it. Stick with us. We'll be right back on the other side after we take our last break.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil. We're inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is out on assignment, but I have the pinch hitter. He's right here, ready to go, and that's A.D. Drew. Obviously, we have Charles Bishop that always brings it to you nice and heavy. As you get in there, we are missing our data doctor, but we'll see if he, takes some of those data breaks. We'll see if one of these guys wants to get into that. But anyway, let's get back to it. I'm gonna start with you, Charles. Spring football. I know you shook your head in agreement that a lot of people get excited, but we are in the business of telling the story of HBCU sports, and that is this time of year. What have you heard out there in terms of spring football in general? What are you excited about, or are there any new names that kind of shake your head across what is coming to your attention at this point?
Yeah, I think there obviously you have a tremendous amount of changes over at Jackson State. So obviously there's going to be a lot of excitement around Jackson State spring practice, a spring ball game this weekend. In terms of the excitement there, I mean, they have a whole day of events planned out through that spring game. So a lot of Jackson State fans get an opportunity to see how this team is reconfigured, especially along the offensive lines, defensive lines, and the skill positions, quite honestly. It is going to probably be a fun day, a Saturday, in terms of just watching what that team has and some new names and faces to become acquainted with. In that regard, same thing with Texas Southern. I think there should be a lot of excitement around Texas Southern football. They have added some pieces from the transfer portal, including one name that sticks out in terms of Quadarius Davis, who was at Jackson State, but who is now at Texas Southern. He has some real YouTube highlights, especially from his time in high school, but a lot of excitement with regards to what he can bring to this Andrew Body-led offense. The same thing for Purview. You take a look at Texas Southern Purview, they were right there on the cusp of the SWAC championship. Both lost some pieces in the transfer portal, but both are bringing in new pieces. Think about an individual like Brian Jenkins, who was at Alabama A&M, who's now at Purview now, who can be a real playmaker for the Purview A&M Panthers. But, you know, when we take a look at these spring games and talking informally to coaches, you know, around the league, the excitement starts coming that first summer session, because you get another wave of guys who transfer in and out of school. So I think for a lot of fans, we enjoy the spring game in terms of knowing who the new faces might be, but there's always a look toward that summer session in terms of who are some new pieces that could be coming into these programs.
Good stuff. Drew, same question to you in regards to the spring football. Where are you at? What have you heard? What's hot? What's not? Any concerns out there of what's taking place in the spring football?
Well, first of all, I want to give the people at Florida A&M University, Josh Padilla, Coach Willie Simmons, and everybody involved, their kudos for just bringing hype around spring football, because spring football is something that true football fans really don't kind of get into because of some of those factors that Charles just mentioned. But if you watch the FAMU spring football draft and the production that they put into it, with Commissioner Willie Simmons stepping to the podium looking like Roger Goodell, and shots from the war room with the different coordinators and the coaches, the only thing that was missing was the players' instant reaction when their name was called.
That was really cool.
The green room, they if they would have had the green room like they do on like we'll see you in 2 weeks on the NFL, that was the only thing missing. But that's how you bring hype around spring football, by making a production out of it. And of course, coming out of that production, season tickets do go on sale Saturday when they
There you go. Exactly.
So somebody marketed it, earned their degree. I don't know where they got it from, but they earned their degree.
That was damn well done. It really was.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. Staying in the state of Florida, I want to see what happens with Bethune-Cookman in their spring game, given all the turmoil that they had in the off season, starting from going through essentially 3 coaches. You had your previous head coach, you had Ed Reed, and now you have your current head coach. I want to see. That's one team I really want to see what they look like in spring, because they had the latest start of any of our Division I programs, just getting everything together, getting their stuff off the ground. Looking at the Division II level, let's stop. We can't really look at the Division II level because of what Charles said. People are going to transfer after these spring games. So the division, especially on the Division II level, the roster you see in these spring games will not be the roster that you see in the fall. Because a lot of these people who are out there still in the portal, or who decide to get into the portal late and who don't have a home, wind up falling down to some of these Division II programs. And these Division II programs pick up a lot of studs during the summertime, people who were not on the map, not on the depth chart or the radar, during these spring games. So Division II fans, please take the spring game with a salt shaker, not a grain of salt. You need to take it with a whole salt shaker, because the roster that you see today will not be the roster that you see September 1.
Good stuff, Drew, as always. With that, I'm going to go back to you, Charles, from this question and kind of borrow from some of the high points that AD Drew talked about. Obviously, FAMU took it to the next level, but we've seen this across HBCU sports of really making the spring game an event. Prairie View a couple of years ago, they would almost have a spring jambalaya, if you would, where they would have either track going on with high school day along with baseball and softball games at home, coordinating
I've seen
with
some of
these
those.
spring football games. You've seen that across. But you see a lot of production and a lot of hype about bringing people to campus, almost in a mini homecoming, if you allow me to use that framework, where there are significant events, where there's concert, spring fest type of things going on, as Drew just alluded to. What are your general thoughts about how HBCUs have taken advantage of the momentum of spring football and really made it more of an event?
I go back to the COVID year when we played in the spring, and you really saw this wellspring to me of really trying to churn out the attendance in terms of making it a real party-like event atmosphere. Obviously, we were dealing with the pandemic at the time, but I really took note of some marketing and branding ideas that really flowed through that spring COVID season, and now you see kind of the manifestation of it a little bit more. You mentioned AD with the draft, if you will. Jackson State, the culture that is that you're pulling back the curtain on a new regime, so there's an entire event that's going along with the spring game. A huge party afterwards that is going on at the convention center in Jackson. This Guard the Yard event that everybody is looking forward to. So there's been a wellspring, I think, of marketing and branding ideas that have really come out of the spring games, and really trying to galvanize that fan base to purchase season tickets. We now have a much better understanding of how important season tickets are towards the growth and the wealth of your particular football program.
Same question to you, A. Drew. I know you focus on FAMU, and they certainly deserve the kudos in terms of continuing the tradition of taking it to the next level. But if you look across the board in terms of what we see with HBCUs and using the spring game as a spring fest, as you alluded to, or having multiple events in terms of baseball, softball, if you would, or even track if they have it. What are your thoughts about that? What are the next nexus that you see coming up?
As a HBCU fan, I love the fact that if it's thought out well, or for a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I could do multiple athletic events on my particular campus, because it's a great revenue booster and it's an extra recruiting tool. Some of those football prospects that you were looking at who were not on your radar in the fall, or who did not get an opportunity, and I'm talking about juniors now, sophomores and juniors who have not had that chance to come to campus during football season, maybe because they're focused on their individual high school seasons. This is a good opportunity to give them a good taste of what that atmosphere is like at your institution, with all the sports and all the alumni coming back and the student body coming back. And for the students, this is a good last hoorah before they go into finals. So it's good for the students to be able to kind of let their hair down and do that. Now, as a administrator, it's hell when you got all those sports going on at the same time, because let's be real, you are not staffed to handle a track meet, softball, baseball, tennis, golf, and a football game on the same day, let alone the same weekend. You usually have enough staff on your campus to be able to handle two simultaneous events, in a good situation. But to have 5, 6 events going on at the same time, that is tough as an administrator, calls for a lot of additional resources. The only thing I'm going to say with that, for those institutions who do pull that off and pull that off well, kudos to you. But please do not try this at home, as they say. Do not try this unless you know you have the staff, the parking, the security, the everything else that it takes to pull off these events, because you have to essentially plan this like it's homecoming in order to cover everything that you need to cover as far as staffing goes.
As we come to close it out, again, let me say happy Alpha-versary for the 24 Sons of Raw. And the reason I bring that back up, because that's the other thing that is nice part of having the spring and the weather warming up. Oftentimes you have a lot of the Greek organizations crossing new lines. So this is a chance to get them out and get some excitement as well, whether it's the sororities or fraternities. So again, shout out to 24 Sons of Raw. Happy anniversary. With that being said, we'll come to a close. Thank you for listening to Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, obviously our guest, A.D. Drew, as he's really just a regular. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest in the lab with the news. It'll be interesting to see. I think the big game I'm focused on this weekend is Texas Southern and Southern in terms of that matchup, obviously, in the West. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, with DrKenyattacavil on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube is Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you like and subscribe. Download my JBN, my BCSN. Again, we're running a special for HBCU businesses out there, $300, $500 special. If you get a chance, go ahead and go to the website and participate. That it's a great opportunity to support us and allow us to support you. Dream big, continue to move forward as we just talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
A.D. Drew?
Lecture.
Dismiss.